a good time of the day. Our practice was invited to make presentations at two international conferences. The presentation was related to a research project we had about prophylaxis of COVID with over-the-counter formulations. As a disclosure, we all are fully vaccinated, for me and my family too. Having said that, we all see that you may need additional means and additional ways to prevent or to live with COVID if you want it becomes endemic. So without further ado, I want to share this presentation with you.
Hi, I'm a patient of Dr. Mangolin's. I've been coming here for about 7 months now, and he's a great doctor. He's managing my lower back pain for me, and I'm very satisfied with his care, and he's very kind, and the whole staff here is very kind.
We're going to talk about 20-week study of clinical outcomes of over-the-counter COVID-19 prophylaxis and treatment. Please go to the next slide. Yeah, I would like to thank our team, Dr. Jeremy Lukens, Mr. Sanford Lefkowitz, who will talk at the end of the presentation, and our wonderful staff and my family for supporting me during this study. Please move forward. Next slide. Yeah, first of all, when we talk about COVID-19, I want to make a disclosure that I'm fully vaccinated. My team is fully vaccinated. Even my 9-year-old daughter is fully vaccinated with 2 shots. It's not a talk about for or against vaccination. The way we see COVID-19 is, we call it Swiss cheese defense model. Every layer of defense, anything you do, from wearing a mask to doing a vaccine, has certain advantages and disadvantages, okay? And it's like this layer of Swiss cheese with a hole. One layer can have big hole, another layer can have a small hole, but every layer has a hole, it has a disadvantage. The more layers of defense you get, the better you are. That's how we looked at it. And we saw our study or our protocol as an additional layer of defense, which was very helpful in the beginning of pandemic. And as I can show you, it's still very relevant now when we see that there are, more and more variants. Hope Omicron is the last one, but may not be. And now we see more and more that vaccines also have their disadvantages. Like in our model, has a hole in this Swiss cheese layer. Next slide. Yeah, let me first tell you about our clinic. Unfortunately, in the United States, opioid overdose is #1 cause of death, and the age between 18 and 45, recent statistic, including overcame motor vehicle accidents. Next slide. Unfortunately, the mortality is going up despite all the efforts and regulations. And you see that's our state, Ohio, when they started to regulate around 2010, 11, we were average, and the mortality is going up and up, unfortunately. Next slide. And the same population, that's one of the earlier slides. There are updated slides that basically support the same thesis, that the same populations or groups, socioeconomic strata that are susceptible to COVID are susceptible to opioids and vice versa. Next slide. We deal with difficult patients. Next slide. Sometimes they get aggressive. Next slide. And the government came up with some strategy to combat opioid abuse, misuse, and overdose. Next slide. which one of them is advancement of multidisciplinary pain management programs that we are one of them in the epicenter of the epidemic. Next slide. When the epidemic started, we were facing a difficult dilemma because we could have gone telemedicine like everybody else, but we would be putting patients at significant risk because we still need to do certain types of screening for our patients. Like on the basic level, it's very hard to do urine screen, through telemedicine, definitely. But there are a lot of other screens that made it almost impossible to provide same quality of care through telemedicine. You can do something, but not the same thing. Next slide. And, we did not get any government funds specifically for that. So we tried to brainstorm and come up with our own protocol. Next slide. And, this is a little bit, I throw a little bit of stoicism. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to with the same weapons of reason, which today arm you against the present. So we just had a brainstorm and we decided we stay open, and we decided to come up with our own protocol, which would be down to earth, available to people, and based on some reasoning and science available to us. And again, our goal was to protect staff and patients. Very important understanding our study design and statistical apparatus we implemented. Next slide. And again, our goal was to save life. If that protocol helped somebody to stay away from a hospital or saved a life, that's the best reward for our study. Next. This is our team. It's just part of that. And you see, we're a very diverse team with different backgrounds. And it helped us, just 1 second. It helped us in many different ways. We had team members who at early stages read literature in Mandarin Chinese, for example, about what's going on in China. We had people with background and exposed to herbal medicine and so on. So we was a very good combination, in my opinion, and a very kind of strong, brainstorming type of approach. Next slide. I think it should be a video that you can play. You just need to press play and should play. It's a patient testimonial. Yep. Just play. Yeah. That's amazing. I think you can do it. Well, while it's loading, I'll just mention that from the early stages of pandemic around March 2020, we started to look at the use of zinc because it was widely available. Dr.
McGolan told me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. McGolan told me about the medication zinc, vitamin C, D, and zinc. And on the floor in the prison, 160 inmates were sick with COVID and they couldn't recover. And I told them about the vitamin C, D, and zinc, and now all of them are doing better. All of them are up and they're active, and they're all extra grateful about learning about the zinc.
Yeah, so that was the initial impression. We had to come up something available to us. Again, it's March, April 2020. We were, looking at how to reuse K95 masks, and though that's way before vaccination, and people needed some kind of simple down-to-earth response. And that was the first observation that zinc may work. Common sense vitamin D, now we know it reduces mortality from all causes. Vitamin C and E, as I explain later. Next slide. This is just some of our patients. You can play it. Well, I guess it's technical, but the point here is that
some
we have
relief, but never a lot of pain relief. And I was starting to get pretty hopeless. When you're in great pain for a long time, you really wonder how much you want to go on. And when you get someone who respects you, who listens to you, and who tries things that nobody else bothered to try, things start looking up, and all of life starts feeling better. And one of my great joys in life was helping other people. And I've been in too much pain to be a helper to other people. And now I look forward to getting back to life. So I really appreciate Dr. Margolin, and I think you will too.
Yeah, the point here, there's people that it's not just getting medications like blood pressure pills or cholesterol that are also very important. I've done 2 years of internal medicine, so it's very close to my heart. But nevertheless, here you have people that if you lock them up, if you deny access to medications, they can get seriously hurt. And that's why we find that we work very hard to keep our doors open and to keep patients safe. Next slide.
I am so.
Yeah, this is
Hi,
a patient.
my name is.
Yeah, this is a patient with medical comorbidities who received other treatments, and nevertheless, the COVID team in the area felt that supplements helped him out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yakov. I'm a patient of Dr. Margolin's for many years. When the COVID virus first came out, he advised to take certain vitamins, quercetin, vitamin C1000, and zinc. My physician said when I came down with COVID-19 that these particular vitamins helped modulate the illness. I did not get that sick. I received monoclonal antibody infusion and I'm feeling wonderful, but my doctor said very highly respected what the Dr. Margolin said about the vitamins that help modulate how sick you get with COVID. I could never thank him enough for saving my life. So
again, we'll talk about whether it's statistically significant. He mentioned quercetin. I'll address it later. Let's go to the next slide.
hi.
I really appreciate Dr. Margolin for all of his help in getting me back in the workforce and allowing me to function back to my baseline of normal.
Yeah, you see this patient with scrubs. For patient confidentiality, I don't disclose his details, but he's an essential worker. And this is one of the testimonials that it actually helped people to come to work and stay safe. Next.
I really.
My name is John Florallen. I come here almost 2 years, but I like it. I like the doctor service. I'm satisfied. I'm happy.
We have very diverse patient population, and we try to randomize it, as I will mention, but it's both genetically and racially diverse. And I think it was randomized as much as possible in both groups. Next slide.
Hi, my name is Tammy Franklin. I am a patient with Dr. Margolin. He gave me my injections for my knees, and since then, I was able to do more on my exercise and rehabilitation. I'm actually now on the treadmill for 20 minutes, the bike for 20 minutes. I'm doing 10 sets of squats. It works excellent.
Here, the point is, it's not just the medication. If you lock people up, they stop exercising and it has adverse effect on their health. Nutrition also plays a huge role. It's beyond the scope of this presentation, but it all comes together when you talk about COVID protection. Next.
My name is Kenneth Gaines, and I'm here at Dr. Margolin's office, the best doctor on the planet. When I first came in here, I had so much pain I couldn't even do anything. Now I'm going fishing. I feel good about myself, self-esteem. My appetite is good. I'm sleeping good. Now I'm thinking about doing a whole lot of other things I didn't used to do. But thanks to Dr. Margolin and the medicines and this technique and the friendly people and stuff that work here, made me able, plus they love me and I can't help for coming back. I feel better every day. Every time.
Yeah, the point here, again, I'll try to go as fast as I can, is the self-esteem part. We had a lot of psychological comorbidities, and actual regimens like that can help people be active, and it has a big impact. Next.
My name is Ken.
I think it's the last
Hi,
one.
my
Yeah.
name is Angie, and I've been coming here since 2011, and I've had a lot of back pain, but since I've been coming here, it's been controlled, and I'm very happy and pleased with.
Yeah, and let's go to the actual slide. She's, again, the point here, she is also an essential worker in a different way, and the regimen helped her to come to work. I won't repeat myself. We started in March, July 2020. We had to follow CDC and Ohio State rules. We implemented additional measures like UV surface sterilization. We stuck UV rods in the conditioning ducts and furnace ducts and so on. And I'll go and explain why I still think the statistics is very sound for this study. And we followed the safe doses, and first primum non nocere, first do no harm. The doses and the components we chose are well known and are safe. Next. Well, the first question when you do a study like that, and I'm MD, PhD by training, so I'm well aware of people can say, how do you know it's randomized? How you selected the groups? What was your thinking? And here we said right away that was one of the purposes of the introduction. Our main goal was to protect people. So it would not be ethical for us to deny treatment for somebody if we think it works. It was not run and arranged like classic randomized trial, even though we advocated, we didn't get any budget for that. We're like a small program, sitting in the trenches of the opioid epidemic. But we did our best to come up with sound, statistically valid results. Next. Let me talk a little bit about the regimen. Since COVID started, everybody checks antibodies. What is the level of antibodies? How much of what the boost causes and so on. And antibodies definitely have their own, value, but people sometimes forget about something called cellular immunity. Cellular immunity, and in my opinion, cellular immunity plays a huge role in fighting COVID. And methods and preparations that medication and over-the-counter treatments that can facilitate cellular immunity are extremely important in the fight of the pandemic. Next. Well, I talked about zinc. I'll just a little bit faster. When we started to use zinc, the thinking was, well, it should suppress replication inside the cell. And we had some kind of general understanding that it's safe. We assume there were some publications already that part of the population is deficient in zinc or maybe deficient, and it has positive effect. It regulates non-specific immunity. It enhances natural killer cells. Next. Well, since then, we know that zinc has much more to offer than that. It does do immune response modulation through a variety of mechanisms. I'll show you more in a second, but it also interferes with virus binding. It works on ACE2 receptors, and it works on the cilia in the respiratory tract. Next. After us, independently, in July 2010, there was a great article about zinc. First, there is impressive intersection of known risk factors for zinc deficiency, and I'll show you those circles in a second, and susceptibility to COVID. We know zinc supplementation has good record in preventing viral disease. And what I mentioned is known to increase ciliary lengths movements, which is important for respiratory tract protection. And it has importance development and function of the immune cell defense. Next slide. Well, this slide is a little bit loaded. You can go to the actual article, look at it. Conceptually, it's a great picture in my opinion. Yeah, zinc works on viral replication, number 2, but it has a lot of other functions. You look at the lung barrier function, immune function. It has impact on natural killer cells, 7, on T cells, on macrophages, right? On hosts of different immune functions. And as you see, risk groups, number 1, there is a clear correlation, epidemiologic correlation between zinc deficiency and susceptibility to the virus. The problem that we saw is that zinc by itself has poor penetration of the cell membrane, and we were looking for a ionoform to facilitate that. Next. We talked about it, and I'll just talk about the last part, a limited side effect toxicity. We don't want, usually side effects are not reported with zinc below 50 milligrams a day, but we still wanted to limit side effect toxicity. Next. Well, we used several ionoforms, and that's maybe the interesting point of our protocol. It has more than one ionoform for zinc. We wanted safe over-the-counter preparations, as I said. So we came up with quina bark. It's basically a mixture from the bark, which has some different quinine-based zinc ionophore substances. Quinine, interestingly, has independent antiviral activity. It was shown against herpes simplex virus prior to COVID and against COVID, and possible anti-TNF activity. Next. Well, why do we need ionoforms? It increases penetration of zinc, intracellular zinc concentration, impairs intracellular replication variety of RNA viruses, including poliovirus, influenza virus, and so on, and SARS-CoV as well. Again, we didn't see any toxicities or any concerns for ionoforms. So as I can see, it has synergistic effect that pushes zinc inside the cells, but it has possible antiviral effect itself. And that's the point of our protocol. It's not just a random laundry list mixture of anything that we thought it could have worked against COVID, but there was certain rhyme and reason in how we composed it. And to the best of our ability, we tried to implement science that was available to us. Next. Well, we saw that. Next. Are we going backward? I thought we saw that. Yeah, let's go forward. Yeah. Yeah, quercetin. That's the second ionoform. Is actually a flavonoid, right? It's substance which is available in apples, in buckwheat, in certain plants. It enhances entrance of zinc into the cells, but it also independently, and that's the point of this protocol, not only it pushes zinc in the cell, it blocks viruses from entering the cells in the first place, and it ranked number 5 highest out of 20 by University of Tennessee study of any FDA-approved molecules for use in humans, and it has very strong anti-inflammatory properties. So we thought, when primarily the information about cytokine storm started to come out, we thought it's also a useful feature of quercetin. And now there are independent studies of quercetin that actually supported, to some extent, our assumption. That we even got a question why we didn't use quercetin separately in those patients, and the answer is very simple, because again, we're not a research institution. It took us a lot of effort to do it on 113 patients, and to do another study just for quercetin without budget, doing all the clinical responsibilities that we're doing, it's just not feasible, but it's a great idea and we're for that. Next. Yeah, that just shows you that it has very strong ACE2 activities, just quercetin alone. So we have both, we have synergistic effect in terms of pushing zinc inside the cell. We have anti-inflammatory activity, and we have good effect in terms of blocking virus into blocking viral entry on ACE2 receptor. Next. Well, good old vitamin D. I'll be very brief. I'll just doing my best to, at least I warn that we may go over, but I'll try my best to follow the schedule as much as I can. You don't need me at this point of the pandemic to know that vitamin D is good for you during the pandemic, and generally reduces mortality of all cases. We found it as a good part of this protocol. I just want to mention that originally we used D3. Later in the pandemic, after this study, we used D2 as well, primarily for people who were infected or exposed. We used D2 and we used D3 for prophylaxis. Next. Vitamin C, right? Good old vitamin C. Again, you don't need me. It has been there around for decades. Enhances NK cells. Again, remember zinc. It has synergistic effect. There were studies about positive effect on flu and respiratory diseases with narrow margin effectivity. If I can sum it up in, it's a long talk. We can talk for 45 minutes about vitamin C, but I think it shows some effect. And the question was, again, well, here we tried to achieve randomization, but it's not like NIH type of study with, double blind or complete randomization. And the differences between our outcomes and outcomes of vitamin C studies is a very significant statistical difference, which I'll mention in a second. Next. Vitamin E. Don't disregard vitamin E. We had actually good experience with vitamin E. It enhances immune system function, reduces the risk of infection, modulates T cells, indirectly affects inflammatory mediators, and again, NK cells, So if you look from all directions, we have synergistic effects on cellular immunity. That's my message. Next. Well, I talked about study design, so I'll be brief. We performed some of the monitoring through telemedicine and some in office. Again, we were just, in order to keep people safe, we had to keep the doors open to monitor and supervise the treatment. We have the doors open. And again, we had to use clinical COVID symptoms just because when we started this study, there was no PCR, and even rapid test was a big thing. It was very hard to get. And that's why we basically use the clinical symptoms. Next. Well, this is a protocol. Okay, what it boils down to, and again, we're talking about prophylaxis, 25 milligrams of zinc, 10 drops of quina, 400 milligrams of quercetin. I want to mention that we did not see side effects with quercetin. There was some suggestion, I want to call speculation of the literature. If you take quercetin for a long time, you want to make sure your kidneys are okay. You want to make sure that you don't develop hypothyroidism. We did not see that, just as a disclosure with 20 weeks. Could you go back? Apologize. 1 gram of vitamin C, 1,000 units of D3. Now, it was very conservative. Mayo Clinic, it's when we started, now it talks about 2,000 to 5,000 units, and 400 units of vitamin E. We also added L-lysine, right? It works synergistically with vitamin C and other components. Next. Well, let me be brutally honest with you. As you know, I have some kind of, I always say, almost like multiple personalities, being MD, PhD. So on my PhD side, I want to tell you this study was neither double-blinded or double-blinded because of the reasons I explained. We could not force people to take or not to take over-the-counter supplements or deny them treatment. So basically what we did, we checked how many people were willing to take it, and we took, I think we're 53, and we took approximately similar number of people, I think was 60, who did not want, and we monitored them. Well, there was a possibility, no, just please stay there for a second, that implementation of only part of the core formulation by some subjects. We're fully aware of that. And that's why we reinforced zinc with ionophores, vitamin D, C, and E as much as we can, but part of the protocol could have been implemented. Self-reporting, right? Well, there is no, we could not send police force to these people. So either they reported to us COVID-like symptoms or Department of Health. And we do believe in randomized control studies, as I said. So these are the caveats that I can tell you on my PhD side. On my MD side, I can tell you, look, it's easy, it's cheap, no side effects practically, and I strongly recommend it on the clinical side. Let's move forward. Well, as I said, 113 subjects, there was no formal randomizations for the reasons that I described, but they were more or less our typical patients, equal size regimens, in terms of age, pathology, race, and genetics. They were more or less randomized. Next. Well, over the 20-week study period, only 2 of the 53 test group presented flu-like symptoms. So remember, there was a possibility they were asymptomatic or they were so mild that they didn't report to us, but that was reported to us, while 12 out of 60 control group subjects presented with flu-like symptoms. And this is a very significant statistical difference, 530% better outcome than the control group. Well, and again, the point is, yeah, I mean, you can say, well, but it's not strictly randomized. And as on my PhD side, I said, yeah, I agree with you. It's not strictly randomized because there was no other way to do it. But look at the strong statistical significance that we're going to mention. And, absolutely go ahead, do randomized studies. But again, as a clinician, I think I'm big supporter of that. We still use it to a large extent. Next. We also tested it with, well, how what is the chance of getting COVID after exposure? We have this question in our model. Again, this is before testing, right? So we monitored people based on their symptoms. So we could document exposure. Why? Because if there was a person in the office or in another office which positive for COVID, Department of Health at the time would notify the exposed person at the early stages of the pandemic. Okay, you were exposed to COVID. What are your chances of developing COVID? It's an interesting debate which still is going on. It may depend on the variant and so on, but at that time we used different models, and even with low numbers, as low as sub 5%, we still got significant results. Next. All right, and then I'll ask my associate, Mr. Lefkovich, to talk a little bit about statistical analysis. All right, so, this is, you can get the statistical testing part, I guess. Let me just go to the last slide. The last slide. Yeah, so we have a very detailed statistical part. Sorry if we ran out of time. Yeah, if you go to the last slide, yeah, you can see Mr. Lefkovich email. And there is also, I'm not sure if this is going to come as a commercial product, but there is a company that is interested in investigating it further. If you have interest in that, you can check the website. Again, I'm sorry for running over time. I'll be glad to answer questions.